everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland Retrospective here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network. And this is my weekly show where my guests each pick a film related in some shape or form, and hopefully by the end of this episode, you have two films to add to your watch list. And joining me, our fearless leader, it is Mike Hilty.
Hello, hello. It's still very weird when people call me that, but I appreciate
I
it
feel like I'm the
nonetheless.
only one that calls you that,
Uh,
so
no, because Adam, anytime that we record, he always calls me the boss. And I'm like, "Heh."
I'm channeling the Rocky and Bullwinkle reference there.
Mhm.
And God, I still cannot believe Robert De Niro played Fearless Leader.
Yeah, that's a little rough, and I'm sure that one he'd want that one back.
That could always be a pick show at some point.
Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. I will
I
we
haven't
could
watched that in a long ass time.
we could
So
do ill-fated cartoon live action.
action adaptations. Could do that with Dudley Do Right.
The Brendan Fraser Dudley
Phrase.
Do Right,
Yep,
who,
yep.
you know what's funny? Dudley Do Right, and the combination of that movie and the Mummy movies is one reason why I thought that Brendan Fraser would make a great Peter Parker. Because he's got the quirkiness, he's got a little bit of the zaniness, but he can do the action star.
Turn it back to
And
the 80s.
yeah,
And Encino Man, Brendan Fraser, and just roll right in Spider-Man. There you go.
damn right.
Damn right. But we are not here to talk about that potential future episode. We're here to talk about a double dose of some Ron Howard directed films that are honestly similar in the idea of like these are action kind of thrillers about a very specific profession. And we have Backdraft about firefighters, and we have Apollo 13 about astronauts.
Mhm.
And I will say I had never watched Backdraft, so this was a first time watch for me.
Oh,
And we have two feuding siblings carry on a heroic family tradition as Chicago firefighters. When a puzzling series of arson attacks is reported, they are forced to set aside their differences to solve the mystery surrounding these crimes. And you know what? Who's this starring? Kurt Russell.
Kurt
Uh,
Russell.
and Weiss, because he plays their dad too
Yeah.
earlier in the movie with a sick fireman's mustache.
The stash is beautiful.
And we got sorry, I was gonna say Billy Baldwin, William Baldwin.
Yeah.
Um, which also I was watching this and just my wife was just like, I bet you F Billy Baldwin, didn't you? From Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Yeah.
So that's how I know Billy Baldwin.
Yep.
But this is also starring Robert De Niro, Donald Sutherland, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Scott Glenn, JT Walsh. This just has a really, really strong cast from, was this 90
90.
91, the year
Yep.
of my birth. But, Mike, what are your general thoughts on Backdraft?
So there's a couple things about Backdraft. One, it is a Chicago movie, so
Mhm.
I can't help but love it. Second of all, this is a movie that I watched because my dad owned the VHS. And
This is a
also,
dad movie,
this
through
is
and through.
a total dad movie.
Mhm.
But the thing that always stood out to me about Backdraft, just looking at the poster of it, because I used to
Mhm.
own the poster of this, because a guy walking through a fire, and it's just so badass. Um,
Mhm.
the movie itself is, I think, as close to like a guilty pleasure as I can make it, because this story does not make a lick of sense at all. Um, and also Billy Baldwin and Kurt Russell are just exude big dick energy to one
Yes.
another, and it is so ridiculous. But there's some things about this that I really enjoy, like the firefighter camaraderie
Mhm.
here. This whole concept of like you go, we go, which I always really appreciated that. Um, Robert De Niro is like strangely good in this. Like his whole thing where he's talking about fire and how it's just
Mhm.
fire, all fire does is hate. And just a vivid metaphor with that. And Jennifer Jason Leigh and Rebecca De Mornay are just outstanding in this as well. Um, Scott Glenn with just such an asshole in this, but that is kind of like the epitome of like 90% of the people in this movie is everyone in here is an asshole. And also sneaky Donald Sutherland, just creepy as all hell in
Yes.
this. But yeah, I there's a lot to love about this movie, even though I'll concede it's also not very good.
So, as a first time watch, some of my big takeaways: one, this did not need to be 2 hours and 17 minutes.
No, no,
Um,
absolutely not.
they could have easily cut out the whole entire storyline with Jennifer Jason Leigh,
They
and
could
that
have,
whole
yeah.
entire romance
Yep,
just felt packed on. Because it really didn't add much to the movie, to be
no.
honest. And it really was only there because like this is a early 90s flick that needs to, hit the different quadrants
Hmm.
and get women in the seats too, because this is a macho film
I was about to
through
say,
and through.
wait a second. Kurt Russell isn't going to get the women in the seats?
Kurt Russell's gonna get everybody
Exactly,
seats,
exactly.
which so the opening scene was so melodramatic but so like powerful,
Yeah.
and like I felt so bad for that kid. um Billy Baldwin, I feel like there's such an interesting range of talent in the Baldwin clan, because like
No.
Alec Baldwin is legitimately a fantastic actor. You could What you think of him as a human being, there's plenty of
That's
things that you could tell.
irrelevant. Yeah.
Stephen Baldwin,
It's like,
odd, like he has his moments, like The Usual Suspects, I think was really good. But Biodome, him and Pauly Shore,
yeah.
like come on. And I feel like Billy Baldwin is like serviceable and does a fine job in this role. But I think he's a little out of his depth when he has to act against Kurt Russell the whole entire movie. Because
Well, I
Kurt
think the
Russell
pro
is just so much raw
I think
charisma.
I think the problem is that if he acts around literally anyone, most of them are acting circles around him. So the way that you kind of put it is that Billy just feels like he's the guy in the middle. He's like
Yes.
not quite as good as Alec Baldwin, but not making the shit decisions that Steven does.
Yep.
So poor Billy just in the 90s, they tried to shoehorn him in so much and be like, let's, let's get Billy out there. But
Mhm.
um this also will go down for me as one of the weirdest Universal Studios attractions that are out there because who's clamoring for a backdraft
My wife
theater
loved this trapped amusement apparently, and was very
well,
upset when they took it away.
so okay, slight counter to piggyback
Yeah.
off of that, that doesn't change the fact it's a cool experience. It is
Yes.
awesome. It was an
But
awesome
who
thing.
asked for it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is I guess what I'm asking, what I'm kind of
Like
wondering is
I feel like Twister makes more sense than
mm,
throwing out like a backdraft thing. But I have to say, the special effects in this are insane. Like, I
mhm,
can't believe this movie is 34 years old, and just the incredible amount of care
mhm.
and planning and setup every single one of these fires. And like the moments where like a door will bow out,
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh,
Ooh. Yeah.
oh no. And just like fireballs, like shooting out and stuff like that. All of that was thrilling and exciting and really worked for the film. I There's obviously some like obvious cliches. Like I think JT Walsh is so incredible as being such a hateable guy.
Yes, because that is
And
literally what he is in most of his roles.
yes, and whether it's Sling Blade or the remake of Miracle on 34th Street, here he's just not a kind of guy you like at all. And like that character is so cliche in this movie, but like
Yeah.
he does a great job of conveying that. I love the addition of De Niro in this. And like this feels like a la Copland, where it's
Mhm.
just like he's unexpectedly in this ensemble in a smaller supporting role, but he's so authentic and grounded in it that it really works. I love Donald Sutherland, and he's great doing whatever. It feels like it's kind of, it felt a little distracting, even just having him in this movie in such a small role, but like he makes the most of it. And God, that parole scene
Oh, yeah.
where De Niro pushes his buttons and
Hmm.
he reveals himself to how he really is. That was so good. But like, yet again, did Ronald Bartel need to be in this movie?
No,
And
no.
I feel like that's where a lot of this film, like this Gregory Wyden's script could have been. I
Condensed
can't,
a
I
lot.
can't, I can't legally tell you to lose weight. I just need you to tighten.
Yeah,
Like
right.
that's exactly what this script needed to do. Um, I guess, Mike, I have a question for you. We can reveal it, but at this point, did you see it coming? Who was the arson?
Um, no. When I first saw it, no, because I the first time I saw it, I was like, why would a firefighter do this? But then once you kind of like peel back the layers, like,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
I feel like a firefighter would be the person to know how to do all these things.
right. So when I was a kid, no, I blew my mind. But then after watching, because I rewatched this maybe about 2 weeks ago, was like,
Mhm.
no shit, it was him because who else would have the expertise, like you said, to be
Mhm.
able to set a fire like this? And more importantly, who would have the motivation to do it? Because we've seen this time and time again. The internal affairs department is the one that always fucks people over. So why would this be any different now? Um, so yeah, it I would like as a couple weeks ago, I was like, would it have made sense if it was like just one of the other ancillary firefighters instead of like the top guy? And the answer is probably not because he's Scott Glenn is the one that has like the longest relationship with everybody. He's seen the most, he's been around the most, and he's probably the angriest about everything that's been happening. So yeah, okay, I buy that. That makes sense. I would rather I think it would made sense that he's the guy versus like a random stranger as well.
Well, and I feel like the film tried too hard to hang it on Kurt Russell for you
Yeah.
to just be like, hey, we really want you to think it's Kurt Russell. And it's just
Yeah.
like, it's obviously not. You're trying
It,
way too hard
you're
to
you're
make that.
trying way too hard and there's no way that this guy is that creative that they'll they'll find a way to backdoor this in into Kurt Russell.
Which, and, you know, I'm a humongous Kurt Russell fan,
Mhm.
and I love the moments in this movie where he really gets to like let off some steam. Like when he gets in JT Walsh's face that first time, oh man, that was so damn satisfying. But I didn't expect this film to really be a tale of two stories of you have that first half of the film, that first chunk where it is these two brothers
Yeah.
with
Just
their
button heads.
conflict, button heads nonstop, and then Brian taking a different job, taking on a new mentor in Robert De Niro's Donald, and he's coming from a very different perspective
Mhm.
in terms of like he's not there doing the work. He's there trying to figure out why did we need to do the work?
Mhm.
Like how did this fire start? And I that point that you brought up about him, talking about the fire and understanding the fire, that scene was fantastic. One of the best scenes in the movie. I just feel like it's a little overlong. There's a
Yes.
few threads that could be cut out of it. It's an incredible action thriller. It has such great special effects and staging and all that stuff. I think William Baldwin is solid. I think he's solid. I think he does not stand out in a much more talented ensemble around him.
Which is
But
weird
there's,
because he's kind of the de facto main character. So
well, yeah, that's the thing is Brian is the main character, and he's the least interesting character out of all the main characters in the movie.
yeah, that's tricky, but boy, Kurt Russell, like even just the end with everything with Kurt Russell, which watching that as a kid, I was like, no, there's no way because that was the first time. I guess I don't want to spoil that part. Well, I mean, shit, I've spoiled everything else already, but
Yeah, this is a 34 year old film, so like
this
that sacrifice at the end that he dies and his funeral and everything just
he
hit.
so between this and The Land Before Time with Littlefoot's mom, I was like, wow, movies can kill anybody, can't they? It's not just bad guys who die. It is
Yeah.
people who nobly sacrifice themselves for somebody that they love. That's a hard lesson for a kid to
Yeah.
learn.
And also I would like to say this directly to Ron Howard. How dare you make me have to watch Kurt Russell die twice in this movie? So thanks a lot. So
That's
yes,
uh that's a shitty move. Yeah, I agree with that.
but like I like for a second I'm like, is Kurt Russell only in the opening scene of this movie? And like they didn't even make a big deal of him, but then you see the brother later, and I'm like, okay, I see what they were doing here.
Right.
Um, if this was made closer to today, it definitely would have been Kurt and Wyatt Russell
Oh yeah, yeah,
thrown in
for
there
sure.
for sure. Oh, that would have been an remake backtrack and have Wyatt Russell star in it. I'd much rather have Wyatt Russell than William Baldwin.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
no
definitely.
offense, no
Up to,
offense.
uh, I mean,
Mike doesn't care. We mean all the offense, William Baldwin.
exactly.
Any other thoughts on Backdraft before we shift gears into space?
No, let's shift gears into space. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's launch this rocket, and we're talking about Apollo 13. NASA must devise a strategy to return Apollo 13 to Earth safely after the spacecraft undergoes massive internal damage, putting the lives of the three astronauts on board in jeopardy. And we have obviously Ron Howard directing, starring Tom Hanks, Bill Paxton, Kevin Bacon, Gary Sinise, Ed Harris, um, Kathleen Quinlan, and some other notable like character actors thrown in there, which obviously in both of these movies, both starring Clint Howard, um, because you need Clint
Mhm.
Howard in a Ron
Of
Howard movie.
course. Of course.
But Mike, what are your general thoughts on Apollo 13?
Before I get to my general thoughts, I have a question for you.
Okay,
Before this movie came out, did you even know that Apollo 13 was a thing? Because I sure as fuck didn't. Like,
to be
it's
fair, I
not
was 4 years old when this movie came out,
fuck. I walked
so
right into that. That
So
Oh fuck. That
I don't think I really knew much about spacecraft and trips to space at that point. Um,
oh
I
I
probably knew about the moon landing, but
agree.
like that was probably about it.
Okay. So, all right. I'm about 10 years old when this movie comes out.
Mm,
So, I admit that I'm a bit of a history nerd, so I like
mhm.
reading up on history, but once it gets past World War II, I don't know, things like the space race and things where the US and the Soviet Union are trying to just get into a giant pissing match about everything, that's when I start to kind of check out and lose interest. So,
Is that 2025?
what's that?
Isn't that 2025?
Oh,
Isn't it the
sure.
Soviet Union? Oh, I'm sorry. That's
Oh,
just Putin's Russia. Never mind.
oh,
Continue,
oh,
Mike.
that's ouch, ouch. Yes, that's true. But I did not know that this was like a historical event. So that
Mhm,
is the thing that I appreciated the most about this is that anytime that a movie or a biopic or something can showcase a part of history that doesn't really get as much love per
yeah.
se, and it's still an important part of US history because Jim Lovell is like just one of those astronauts that is just like definitely high up there in terms of the influence that Jim Lovell had on just the whole astronaut program as a
Yep.
whole. So like I didn't know who Jim Lovell was. Like he's not John Glenn and he's not Neil
Yeah.
Armstrong. So, you know, if the biggest thing that he is known for is this catastrophic failure on this, like why would I know it? But watching this was like, yeah, you should know stuff like this because at any point throughout the course of this whole mission, those three could have died. And also, is there a worse way to die than to drift off into space and just go into the nothingness? No, that's a pretty horrible way of
Mhm,
of of going. So I appreciated a lot of what this movie did because it introduced this whole new like part of history that I didn't really know anything about.
mhm,
Tom Hanks is just fantastic in this. And yes, I get that this movie is synonymous with the line Houston, we have a problem.
mhm.
But that as soon as he says that line, it is just balls to the wall the rest of the time. And even though this is based on a historical event, you're still at the edge of your seat wondering if these guys are ever going to get back home.
Absolutely. And this is one of those kinds of films that like I think people take it for granted
Oh yeah, for
because like
sure.
this has become such a just similar to Tom Hanks. You just accept that Apollo 13 is this really quality film and not realize like this is such a great film. And
Uh-huh.
to be honest, this is what probably Ron Howard's best movie. Like,
It depends on your perspective, but yeah, like this is pretty high up there for me. If not my
mhm.
complete favorite, it's definitely like top three.
Well, and this film is 2 hours and 20 minutes. And unlike Backdraft, that feels like you could trim some stuff out. Like, this is very
This
efficient in what it's using its time for. And even from like the opening scene where they set up all of this hope and drive for these astronauts by watching Neil Armstrong on the moon. And it really sets it up. And we care about Jim Lovell and his wife and his child. And we feel that. We empathize. And that's so important. I think that's the important thing that Ron Howard brings is that humanity.
Yeah,
So like people criticize him for being workmanlike and not
sure.
exactly like Ron Howard's not an auteur director or anything like that, but he knows how to tell a story.
Yep,
And there's some films of his that are really, really quality, and this is the top tier one of that. And it's like its effects, its practical effects, everything is so precise and well put together. This cast is great. Tom Hanks is like forget saving Matt Damon from everything imaginable. Like
Mhm.
we would want to save Tom Hanks. Um,
Oh yeah, for sure.
and he just gives so much. He has presence, he has leadership, he has empathy. Bill Paxton, love Bill Paxton, and putting Bill Paxton in anything just makes it better. Um, Seeing Kevin Bacon in
Kevin,
this,
Kevin Bacon is just sneakily just one of the interesting additions to this because Kevin's Kevin Bacon's character, he's the odd man out because he's the
yeah,
last minute addition to this group because Gary Sinise he can't because he's sick. But then you realize, oh, the internet or this is pre-internet, so they done fucked up and like, wait a second, we messed up because Bill Paxton's the one that's sick,
mhm,
not Gary Sinise. So that kind of sucks that that happened, but he's great. Ed Harris is just
so good.
the calm stoic presence that you need throughout this. And I I love, like, this might be my favorite Ed Harris performance because he is just so calm, cool, and collected the whole time trying to get these guys home. And then just that part at the end when like they finally come home. Spoiler alert for a movie that's
For
30 years
history.
old and for history.
Yeah.
But when he just collapses on the chair and is just like, holy shit, I can't believe I pulled this off. That that's just amazing, and I loved it.
Few notes about Ed Harris with hair.
Yeah.
Strange.
Mhm.
Um, his vest, chef's kiss. But
Yeah.
no, he's definitely such a great presence in this film. And you need somebody on the ground to be in charge. And they did it like there's one particular film that I think channels a lot of this, and that's Armageddon.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Billy Bob Thornton is certainly the Ed Harris of the
Mhm.
situation. And like Kevin Bacon kind of feels like the Ben Affleck, a little younger and a little more brash, taking risks. And Tom, like Bruce Willis is the Tom Hanks,
Mhm.
the more veteran, like grounded presence trying to keep this thing together.
The
Obviously,
family connection, yeah.
Armageddon is wild,
Oh yeah,
uh,
for sure.
crazy tone, different kind of movie. But this is a film that, and like, it captures the tone right. We feel for them. We're enjoying like him having his daughter's music is a nice touch because it brings a very different vibe on the ship. And there's moments of levity, there's great like raw moments. And um Tom Hanks's mother in the film has such like a mic drop moment, and I'm just like, damn,
Damn.
Granny, you got this.
Hmm.
Like, what was her exact? But like, I what was it? Are you scared? Question mark. And Susan nods like, well, don't you worry, honey. If they could get a washing machine to fly, my Jimmy could land it. I'm just like,
Huh. Okay,
"Uh,
I
not
believe
worried
you.
anymore. And
Yeah.
like, there's a really good quotes and moments. Like, obviously, the Houston, we have a problem. Like, that's just so iconic at this point.
Yeah.
And just the way that they are able to bring tension and suspense into this very close encounter inside this ship. And you just have such a great cast. I love Gary Sinise, and I would love
Very
to see
sneeze.
Gary Sinise in more things. But he, between this and Forrest Gump, he just brings such an authenticity
Hmm.
and groundedness. Which, can you imagine what it's like after making Forrest Gump with Tom Hanks and making this movie with Tom Hanks, like a year later? But and it's thrilling. It
Hmm.
keeps you on the edge of your seat. It never feels slow. It's just so perfectly paced and put together. This is a really impressive film, and Ron Howard, I think, should get a little bit more attention and credit for it.
He should. I definitely agree. Going back to Tom Hanks for a second. So
Hmm.
he spanned from 1992 to 1990, let's go 99. Like maybe
Mhm.
even 2000. Okay, no, that's not true. Let's go 10 years. So from 1992 until 2002. This is the guy's movie credits, not talking about the TV show credits or any bullshit like that. So we've got, I guess we have to start with Radio Flyer, I guess, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. Then we've got A League of Their Own, Sleepless in Seattle, Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, Toy Story, That Thing You Do, Saving Private Ryan, You've Got Mail, Toy Story 2, The Green Mile, Castaway, and Road to Perdition. No one is ever going to have a career that good ever, ever again.
Damn.
Oh,
Did you say Catch Me If You Can?
that was the last one. That
Yeah.
was the last one. Catch Me If You Can. Because then after that, 2004 is when things get interesting because we get the Lady Killers and the Terminal and the Polar Express.
I will argue with anybody who says that he was miscast in The Lady Killers because he was a damn good time
He
in The
so
Lady Killers,
well
even though it's
plus
like the worst Coen
well
Brothers movie.
plus also Tom Hanks has never played a villain, really. He hardly ever does.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
feel like what Cloud Atlas, he
kind of
and that was the thing, like he played a villain in
yeah.
some of the storylines. They
Mm.
still needed to balance it out and have him.
Be not a villain, but yeah, it's
So is Elvis his only like true full villain performance?
probably yeah, I could see that. And I don't know. I think I I personally don't mind the Lady Killers as much as other people do, but
Mm.
that is the different like that's the last Catch Me If You Can is the last like really, really good one before Tom Hanks starts to, you know, kind of settle into, you know, all the other stuff that he does, which not quite as good as that 10-year run, and ain't nobody gonna have a 10-year run like that ever again.
It was great. It certainly was. And he he's still one of the most well, he should still be one of the most beloved actors, but that's an interesting conversation to have in 2025.
Yes.
Um, but it's just this cast is so perfect.
Mhm.
And there's the emotion. The film takes the time to set up stakes,
Yep.
and it's a state of the art put together kind of film. And this was a period where like Ron Howard was really firing on all cylinders
Fire and
in terms of directing. And like a lot of the times he just does like uh his most recent credits have been very interesting because like you have things like you know he made that Jim Henson documentary,
Mhm.
Rebuilding Paradise, which is about this documentary came out in 2020 and it was about the impending doom of California with fires.
Well,
So people should have watched that.
yeah.
He made Hillbilly Elegy, which is interesting. And I feel like the last like big movie he did was Solo, a Star Wars story, which so many people rag on him for because he wasn't Lord and Miller,
Yeah,
which is a shame.
not exactly fair to do something like that, but still nonetheless, he's definitely still one of our best directors that we have
Mm,
out there. And just because he hasn't had like kind of some of the string of hits that he had before. Like I'd argue Rush is really good
yep.
still. Say what you will about the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons, but they're still entertaining enough. Cinderella
Mhm.
Man is still good, and then A Beautiful Mind. Ironically enough, I was on Robert and Foster's podcast, and we talked about EdTV, and
Yeah.
I called it inferior Truman Show, but upon rewatching it, I was like, it's adequate Truman Show. Not inferior, adequate.
Here's the thing. You know who is an extremely talented, dynamic director? Peter Weir.
Yep.
And I feel like you know what you're going to get out of the directing of Ron Howard. You're going to get a good, high quality, well made film. It's just not going to have um it's just not going to have that same kind of in
Hmm.
terms of like being dynamic or particularly interesting in its direction. But it works. It sets the stage for the actors, the music.
Hmm.
Like the music in this just feels so damn triumphant and make it makes you proud. Honestly, makes you proud to be an American.
Yeah,
And so we need that sometimes nowadays.
for sure.
James Horner was an all-time great composer, and God, his 90s, in particular,
Him and Tom
kills it.
Hanks, they had a hell of a '90s run, so good for them.
There you go. Well, Mike, do you have anything else to add about Apollo 13?
This is another one where the poster's outstanding, or in this case, the VHS cover when I had
Mm-hmm.
it. And one of my favorite things that has come about from like TikTok is the part where at the end when they're all like on the edge of their seats and then they start cheering. And then when TikTok splices in things like when Jon Snow wakes up to that scene, it just makes me so happy because it just keeps Apollo 13 in the pop culture zeitgeist, and I appreciate that.
And it deserves it because
Absolutely.
this is a high quality, really, really damn good film.
Mhm.
Thank you, Ron Howard.
Thank you. Yep,
Thank
absolutely. Brought our homes you brought our boys home. Good for you.
you. Good for you. But Mike, thank you as always for coming on and chatting movies with me.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thanks for indulging me on this one, Shane. Appreciate
Of
it.
course. And next episode, Luke's going to be here, and we're going to be getting weird and doing a double dose of David Lynch with Blue Velvet, and especially Eraserhead.
Hmm.
Very interesting conversation, I am sure. But next month, Mike and I are going to be highlighting Slumdog Millionaire, a film that won Best Picture, but honestly, the shine on it has lost a bit of its luster, and we're going to check it out and give it a good watch. And we're going to be watching Jawar, which is a film that directly influenced it from 1975 Bollywood cinema. But that's a wrap here on the Wasteland Retrospective. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode. What's your favorite Ron Howard film? Mine's Parenthood. I love that movie.
Mm.
But let us know. And also make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. The SPM podcasting network is always expanding. If you're interested in starting a podcast, reach out to Mike. Um, and yes, and if you wanted to join any of our shows, please feel free to reach out and join the crew. And if you like our logo, check out High Flyer Creative for all your digital marketing needs. But most importantly, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Retrospective here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network.